Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Leaders Toolbox. I am so excited that you are here with us today. I hope that you've had an amazing day so far, and we are looking forward to making it even a bit better with the nuggets that we get to share with you here today. The whole point is to sharpen the professional tools that are already in your toolbox and to hopefully add some ones that you may have never known existed. And we have the perfect guest to do that with us here today. I am here with Jay Scherr. He is such an amazing person, leader, man, and so much more. He is a business consultant, a business coach, a speaker, a trainer. And I have had the privilege of being on his podcast a few weeks back. Maybe you've heard it. And I will say that this man has the best voice in the business and one of the best leadership minds to go with it. So, Jay, thanks so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Andre. And I appreciate that very warm and beautiful introduction. And a couple of things just to point out. First, you say that I have a wonderful voice. I am learning from you what a true voice sounds like. And you have an amazing voice. And when you were on my podcast, many of the comments that I received were not only about your leadership prowess and the great insights that you shared, but just your ability to connect with people, your ability to have your message land, the resonance of your voice. Not only are you a powerful presence, but you're just a powerful human being. And I know that you use those gifts that you've been given to the fullest. And I just want to acknowledge and appreciate all that you do. I love watching your videos. I love the behind the curtain aspects that you share about who you are, information about your family, right? You keep it real, but you also provide such great information that we can all learn from to become better leaders and better human beings. So I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here today. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for saying that. And guys, I told you that voice. It's interesting that you said about value and impact, because I when we talk about leadership, I just made an adjustment. So on my mirror, I had my goals. And I think it's important for all of us to have dreams and goals. And I had, sell 200 units of this. I want to do this and then get into real estate, all of these different things. And I erased it 2 days ago. And I simply put up be of value. Money and success and everything you're looking for chases value. So as a business, I'm not telling you don't have goals, because numbers matter. Is what you're doing making you of value and impact in people's lives? So whether it's what you're posting on social media, the conversations you're having, the product that you're serving, the connections that you're making. I once had somebody tell me, Jay, if your value is higher than your customer's stack of money, you'll always be okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
I that stuck with me. And every now and then you got to remind yourself it's not always about the number. Be of value. And it's amazing what happens to the number.
I love the fact that you recognize that, and that you at one point had specific goals in front of you, but you changed that to be of value. And I'm making a note to myself. And I think it's important for all of us, when we talk about being someone of value or providing value, that we know what value means. How is that defined? And for you, and I know this is important to you as well as it is for me, that's understanding our own audience. So understanding our ideal client, customer, the person who's right now, as an example, those that are watching and listening, who are investing time in what you have to say and what your guests have to say. They're looking for something of value. So we have to understand, as a value provider, as a business owner, as a leader, what value is the customer looking for, what's important to them. Because if I'm only focused on myself, the things that I think are valuable, I'm missing a huge opportunity. I'm also making some assumptions about what someone else sees as a point of value. So I love that you have that. I also keep that in mind as well. I just want to make sure that I'm always understanding that if I'm putting content out or if I'm training or offering leadership coaching, that I know what is of value and importance to the person who is directly in front of me.
Absolutely. And that really brings me to my first question for you.
Okay.
Because you are a business consultant, a coach, and a leadership trainer. And you didn't come out the womb born that. You didn't come out with that title. You may have had it in you, but you didn't come out with that title. So I'm assuming that you were something else before. So I want to ask you, because for a lot of our listeners, they may be executives, professionals, maybe frontline, maybe entrepreneurs. I cannot tell you how many executives I bump into that say that they want to start their own business. They want to start doing something similar to what you and I do. So what led you on the path to doing what you do and becoming what you've become?
Great question. So I had a 30 plus year corporate career working for various companies prior to making the decision to start my own coaching and consulting business. And those 30 plus years taught me a tremendous number of lessons about failure, about success, about what true leadership means. And the biggest lessons, of course, came through the many, many failures that I've experienced. And I got to a point, Andre, where I decided that it was a good time to pour into myself as opposed to doing the work that I had been doing, which was not only benefiting me, but was certainly benefiting a corporation more so than it was benefiting me, that it was the right time. I had invested a lot of energy and resources in learning and growing and giving and building teams. And I wanted to take that knowledge and that experience that I had and be able to give that to customers and clients who didn't have access to that the way that I did.
Can we pause for a second? Because
Sure.
I don't want to lose the timing. There are some people, some executives at work right now that will never have that calling to branch out on their own. And that's completely fine. You did. So what was it in you or potentially going on in that time of your life that you're like, yeah, I really want to do this on my own? Because not everybody has that. So I really want the person listening this to be able to relate and say, I was going through that. And then what did you do to start it?
Yeah, so there were a couple of things that were going on in my business life. Actually, I'll let me step back for a moment. It affected both my business and my personal life. So I was traveling extensively. I was on the road typically from Tuesday through Friday and entertaining clients constantly, breakfast, lunch, dinner, evenings, and ultimately, and this was going on for quite some time. Now, I enjoyed many aspects of it, but it was also taking a toll on me personally, and it was affecting my relationship at home.
Sure.
And I felt that, so that was one strong indicator. Now, let me back up for a moment because it's important for you and for the audience to know that I was thriving in this environment, right? There were many benefits to that lifestyle. So I was being compensated well. I had great titles. I mean, my ego was being fed, but it became problematic because there was no balance, if you will,
I
right? It
call it,
was
there's no work-life harmony.
no work-life harmony.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you brought that up because I know that's something that you speak to a lot. And I was definitely feeling that. So there was no harmony there. It was certainly more leaning in the direction of career. But then also, strangely enough, I got to a point where I wasn't feeling as valued
Hmm.
for my effort and contributions, which may seem odd because I just mentioned that I was being compensated well and had titles and so forth. Those are things. They can be important things, right? But there's a difference between the stuff and the way that we feel inside, right? Do we feel valued as a contributor, valued as a leader, valued as a human being? And I
Absolutely.
started to feel less and less valued, and I felt more like I was a machine in a way. I guess that's really the best way to put
Well,
it.
and a machine that's expected not to break.
That's exactly right. And so it brought a very strong focus to awareness to my world. And I began to understand that the importance of being aware
Mhm.
of the people that work with you, that work for you, that are part of your team, and
Mhm.
understanding that, yes, you want the best that you can possibly achieve with someone, but there has to be a level of care, compassion, and
Yes.
empathy.
Yes.
And when we lose that,
Yeah.
we lose a level of respect,
Yeah.
and we lose the true sense of what it means to be a leader. And I was feeling that,
Hmm.
and that was one of the strong indicators that it was time for me to do something different.
Uh-oh.
And I'll also be very candid with you that looking back, I actually stayed in my last position about 5 years longer than I should have, but I wasn't ready to admit to myself. I hadn't grown
Yeah.
enough in my own awareness to recognize that. But now I have the perspective of time, and I can look back and say, I
Well,
really should have made the move sooner.
I call it the safety net syndrome. And you guys listening, you're an entrepreneur, you want to move out on your own, solopreneur, and you're working a job. The safety and security of getting that check once every 2 weeks cannot be denied. I remember working a job, I was working in mental health. And anybody who knows mental health, there's not a whole lot of money there, a lot of rewards there personally, but maybe not a whole lot of money. So I was just starting to work with companies on what I do now. And I signed my first big contract. I knew how much money the contract was and how many months it would allow me because I knew what my bills were, obviously. And I still went back to my boss and said, um, we all knew this was coming. However, I don't want to leave if you still need me. I'll do halftime, or if we can work out time. I'm still trying to hang on to both. And I got the best no I've ever gotten in my life. And they said, this job is way too strenuous. It's way too demanding. We need you here all the time. So now I have a choice. And I chose me. I bet on me. I knew I had 5 months unabated with the money that this just brought in. And I said, look, if I cannot make it with 5 months unabated on my dream and effort every single day, then I don't deserve my dream. And I took the leap. But if my boss would have said, sure, boy, that safety net would have been there. And I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it's really interesting how when you're able to look back, how certain things that occur happen for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
but in that moment, we don't necessarily understand why. It's until we can really begin to pull the lens back a bit, and we have the benefit of perspective, that we start to see that makes sense. Now I understand why that conversation led to this, or this decision led to this, or in your particular case, that one conversation that happened, right? That created a ripple effect that ultimately led to you being able to explore things on your own and demonstrate the greatness that you have within to be able to deliver even more value than you ever were before. And I love that. And you made a very important point for those that are watching and listening right now. And that is that not everyone wants to go off on their own. We see today in the social culture that we have, that it seems like everyone is an entrepreneur. Everyone is like, my social feeds are filled with people who are, start your own this, do this, become a new coach. All these different things are being thrown at us on a regular basis. That's not for everyone. No. And that is okay. Thank goodness it's not for everyone.
If it wasn't for everyone, we'd have no one to hire. So it wouldn't.
That's exactly right. And we, all of us, have to make decisions that are in our best interest, based on our circumstances, based on the things that we want to do that bring us hopefully joy and fulfillment and value, and that we feel like we're contributing. So I love that. I love being around people who absolutely love what they do, that are working for another organization. On the flip side of that coin, if you're interested in starting your own business, if you're interested in becoming an entrepreneur, fantastic. Explore that. And Andre, you also said that you had a runway in front of you before you made the decision. You had a runway, so you knew that from a financial perspective that you were able to go for X number of months, right? Because whenever we start something new, there's a lot of learning involved. There's a lot of work involved. We don't start day one with a built-in revenue stream and customers knocking down the door.
People understand that either. Like there's a song that, I don't know how recent it is, but I heard it the other day while I was working out at the gym, and I had my earphones on and I had to stop cold. And one of the lines in the song was, I did my 10,000 hours while working my 2 to 10. Stopped me from my workout in my tracks, and I almost cried because I remember. So you're looking at going out on your own. You may be working your job, that 2 to 10, that 9 to 5. You got to do your 10,000 hours. And that means, if you don't know what that means, they say it takes 10,000 hours for you to become elite at something. So do your 10,000 hours while you're working your real job. So when you are ready, like it's ready, and you still want to take work, but at least you had mentioned before, knowing your prospect, marrying what you want to do and give with how they need it most. And then now you can start to fly.
That's exactly right.
You made another point that I would love for you to talk about a little bit, and
sure,
something that I very much believe. My real job as a professional speaker and leadership trainer, obviously, is to do a good job at what you do. Like, that's a given. So let's take that off the table. My real job is to love coming home and to have home to want you back. You mentioned traveling a lot. So whether you travel the planet for your work as an executive, or whether you go down the street, or whether you crack open that laptop, how you return home matters. Does home want you back after you leave? How are you talking about your life, your kids, your wife, your husband while you're at work? So when you come home, you like them more and better. So when you made the transition, what's one big thing that you did for work-life harmony? So advice that you could give those listening to enhance their work-life harmony.
For sure. Well, thank you for that question. And I just want to add that when you were on my podcast, you spoke about this so eloquently. And I loved the way that the story that you told and the way that you weaved the message, the importance of work-life harmony and family and wanting to come back home and wanting them to want you to come back home, right? I mean, I just absolutely loved it. So, so a couple of things I'll share this, that when I realized that I did not have that harmony, and I felt it, right? If you don't know that, if you can't feel that in your heart and in your soul, then there is something else that's going on that you need to be aware of, because we can typically tell when relationships are not where they should be. You don't feel good about yourself, or you don't feel good about the conversations that you're having. I felt all of those things. Mm-hmm. So we have to, I've learned, Andre, that we have to practice self-love first, meaning that we have to love ourselves before we can learn to love fully someone else. And that may sound a little odd to people, but if you can't respect the person that you are, if you can't take care of yourself, if you can't show up being fully you, being the person who you're meant to be, the true authentic person, and show your heart and show your soul and speak your truth, if you can't do those things, then it's very difficult for you to be able to be in relationships where those things are meaningful. We've got to give to ourselves first before we can give to others. And, we always use, you hear the analogy a million times about, self-care and, you're on the airplane, the oxygen mask comes down, you put it on yourself first, right before you put it on your child or the person next to you. That analogy goes for every area. So making that transition was first going back to me, and not from an ego perspective, but going back to understanding that I'm a person of value, that I'm someone who brings value to my family, that brings value to those who are in my consciousness, if you will. And so that's really where it started, was going back within to understand who I am as a person, because I lost sight of that. I became somebody who, let me put it to you this way. I wore, and we all do this to a degree, but I was wearing a lot of different masks. I was wearing a tremendous amount of armor to protect and really hide, if you will, the person that was underneath. I was a person who I thought others needed me to be, the person who was receiving the awards and the trophies and the this and the that. But those things really weren't important to me, but I didn't know how to express that. So I had to get back in touch with who I am so I could become the best
let me ask you a question.
The best father. Yes.
Let me ask you a question, because I'm big on the Leaders 7, my 7 professional languages. And your company was rewarding you with recognition and affirmation and potentially incentives. The better you did, the more you made. However, I found that leaders and organizations lead lazy. So they lead with their top 2 languages, which was recognition and, and affirmation and incentives for you. But that wasn't your top 2. So I teach leaders this all around the world. What could they have done to made you feel more connected, more welcomed? What could they have spoke to you or provided you at that time? Now looking back on it.
Yeah, that is such a great question. And this is so important in one of the areas that I speak to today. So have you heard of the book, the Love Languages?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So those love languages apply from a business and leadership perspective as well. And let me just give you a quick snapshot. So from a relationship standpoint, let's just say it's a spouse or a significant other. If I'm speaking one language and my significant other is speaking a totally different language, then we're going to have a difficult time communicating with one another, right? Or if the things that are important to me that I think are important to my significant other, but I don't know that for sure, but I'm just making the assumption that this is important to me, then I'm also going to have a difficult time forming bonds and strengthening relationships, right? Because this is, at the end of the day, it's all about how we communicate. So how does that apply to the business setting and to leadership? We have to do a better job of getting to know the people that we are surrounded by, getting to know the people who work for us, who work with us, who are
especially
on
from
our
hybrid
teams.
and remote work and travel.
It's huge. And I can assure you, don't ever make the excuse that because we're using Zoom or some other type of virtual platform that we can't find a way to connect. We can find a way to connect. When you start to understand that you're not checking in on someone, that you're checking on someone, that slight change of language makes all the difference in the world. Get to know your people, find out what's important to them, find out what motivates them, what drives them, what's important to them, learn about their families, understand what's going on in their world. Know that when someone is showing up and they're having a tough time outside of work, that is absolutely going to impact the way that they show up and the way that they perform for you as a leader and as a business owner.
Absolutely.
I wasn't experiencing that. What was most important was performance. And is performance important? Of course it is. Right. We all have, right, there are metrics that we're all trying to hit. There's goals that we're trying to achieve. But here's the thing, when you start to care about your people, and when I say care, I mean truly care, right? We really want to find out more about who that person is and that we actually show care and empathy and concern. When those things matter, that individual is going to give you more than you have ever seen from that person or from anyone else. It starts with communication, and it starts with care and empathy and taking care of the people that you're in charge of. Absolutely. And you can never lose sight of that.
It sounds like from the 7 languages that I had come up with, quality minutes matter. And not everybody circles it, but those that do, it really matters. It's a few minutes of conversation that have nothing to do with work. And in that, I mean, you have your one-on-one meetings. I cannot tell you, it is the #1 canceled and rescheduled meeting across all companies. And when it is done, it's typically done poorly because it's all about metrics, protocol, procedure, policy changes. I love starting with the POW, the POW, it's the positive of the week.
Absolutely.
Hey, what's been going good in your past week? I had no idea that for me, my son just started his first varsity game ever, did really well. Gained 8 pounds. We were just talking about it before we hit record. 8 pounds in the past 2 weeks. It has all A's and B's. Like you may not have known that. Professionally, I got asked to speak for the New Jersey court system. I was not always Mr. You Evolving Now. I grew up in inner city Philly, and if I told some of the people that I grew up with that now I am training New Jersey court leaders, like that's a huge positive. Like wow, like it's an amazing situation, but somebody wouldn't know that. And it doesn't always have to be these big things, but those quality minutes matter and they can happen. I want to slide back to leaders really quick because you've had 30 plus years doing this and now teach and train people worldwide. I want to ask, and this is a double barrel question, please forgive. Okay. Question number 1, when you transition from the corporate world to now coaching people in the corporate world, what was shocking about that transition? When you started working with executives and you're like, I didn't expect that, or I didn't know that, or I assumed ... So what was a shocking moment, number one? And number two, what are the 2 to 3 nuggets that you want all leaders to walk off this call knowing?
Great question. So starting with the first part of your question, what was shocking? The impact that I could have on someone else's life and ability to help that person pull the greatness out that they already had within them. So the recognition of being able to do that, and that to me that's very powerful, and I don't take that lightly at all. And I just want to bolt on the other piece to that is that understanding the immense responsibility we have when we are our own business owner, coach, consultant, whatever it happens to be, to always serve with excellence. I didn't say perfection. I said serve with excellence. There's a tremendous responsibility when someone else is investing their hard-earned resources, their time, especially for me, when someone hires me as a coach, I understand what it takes to get to the point where you say, I want some help. I can be better than where I am today. There's some gaps that I need to fill. And that takes a lot to get to that point, asking for help. And so I always want to make sure that not only am I prepared, but I'm also delivering on excellence. And I make sure that that's defined and that I'm listening to what excellence means to the person who I'm coaching or who's in front of me. So that's the first part. The second part is what I believe that a leader should take away from this conversation. So first, and I didn't necessarily mention it this way, but my belief is, with my experience and in the work that I do today, to be the best leader that we can be, to be the most effective leader, we have to start by leading ourselves. It starts with self-leadership. Yeah. And that, to me, is the way that we constantly learning, never settling for where we are right at this moment, understanding what our own strengths and what our weaknesses are. So the self-awareness piece, knowing those blind spots, surrounding ourselves with other people who can help not only share with us where we're doing well, but also share the areas of improvement. Because even with self-awareness, we don't always have a holistic view of how we show up to the world. Taking care of ourselves mentally, physically, financially, spiritually, relationships, doing those things, putting the work in that's going to help create that work-life harmony that you talk so eloquently about. All of those areas are so important for self-leadership, because if we can't lead ourselves, I can promise you this, we will never, ever be an effective leader of others.
When we don't lead ourselves and we're simply good at our job, and I'm not minimizing being good at your job, please do that. However, when all of those other buckets aren't filled, and I loved how you mentioned spirituality, financially, mentally, relationally, what happens is we overcompensate and we wind up doing more and more work. So that person that might be texting and emailing on the weekends, bringing their briefcase to the beach, this overcompensation for a lot of different reasons. It is a leader's job to sell their position to those under them. And it's hard to sell people on being you one day when all of those other buckets aren't filled. So people look and say, wow, this person's texting from the beach and doing this and sending emails on the weekends, but yet they're on their 14th divorce, and their life is a mess and they look like a wreck and they're about to literally have a heart attack right in front of me. No, thank you. I don't want that promotion. No, thank you. I don't want a job that makes me look like that, or a company that is okay with me looking like that.
That's right.
So
yeah, you are so right.
With that self-care, with that personal leadership, it sells your position to other people. And some people want it right now. Some people are steady streams and they're okay right now. But when they do they know where to go? Do they have an example set? So that's really, really huge. And even people that don't enjoy you very much, because everybody doesn't like you, and you might not like everybody that you work with, but they will respect you because they're looking and they're like, I want to say something bad, but that person really got their stuff together.
Yeah, that's true. And, it also makes me think about the importance of culture. So we as leaders, when we move into a leadership role, remember that leadership is not about you. Leadership is about we. Leadership is about pouring into others, coaching up others, and helping to develop other leaders. That is what leadership is about: strong communication and looking at setting others up for success and helping them become the best leader that they can possibly be. Part of that is how we develop our own culture. And the reality is, if we don't establish the culture itself, culture will create itself, right, on its own.
Every day, right?
every day. And the way that you show up to the world, the way that you show up as a leader, is an example of the expectation that you have for the culture of your organization. You're setting that culture through example, not through words, right? Because you're being watched more than you're being listened to.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, I want to get into some rapid fire questions because I want to run out of time soon. And then I want you to share where people can connect with you, because you guys listening, I hope that you are picking up the nuggets that Jay is putting down and will connect with him to chat later. So here's some rapid fire. Okay. Here we go. Number one, your biggest leadership mistake. More importantly, the lesson that you have learned and applied since then from it.
Absolutely. That really is an easy one, because it's one that's been made more than once. And it's not listening.
Ooh.
Being more concerned about myself and what I was saying, as opposed to listening, asking good questions, and being interested in the other person and what they had to share. So I made that mistake, and more times than I'd like to admit. And honestly, I still make that mistake from time to time. I'm a work in progress. I've come a long way, but I still have more work to do. So that would be one. The greatest lesson is listen more, ask good questions, and be interested in the other person.
I love it. And I'll piggyback too, like from a business standpoint, my business shifted and quadrupled when I stopped leading with my menu and started asking, what would you like to get out of bringing someone like me in? I go and ask my wife, what would you like to get out of our conversation? So I understand where we're going. Once you know where you're going, now we could there's different roadmaps to get there. I asked my son, we meet once a week. Well, he's here all the time, but we meet once a week. So I'm not always pestering him about school, football, whatever, his girlfriend, whatever. We have a designated time, like a one-on-one meeting with an employee. We sit down. What would you like to get out of our conversation? Do you have any questions? What do you want to get? And then we can always get to what I want to get, but let's start with them. What's one thing that our audience would be surprised to know about you?
That I was a professional musician in a rock band and traveled the East Coast of the United States, playing in different places, and loved that lifestyle. What
was the instrument, or was?
I'm a drummer.
Oh man. So Jay was rocking the drums, you guys. That is awesome. Last one. Biggest one piece of advice that you would give to frontline workers. We talk a lot with leaders. We talk about leaders building leaders. We also have to talk about people being willing to be led. So, one piece of advice you would give for more frontline workers.
Good question. So, one piece of advice would be to do what you love to do the work that you love to do, and to always work on building your skills. Do the work you love to do and continue to build new skills.
Wow. I couldn't say it better. Like that is so awesome. Jay, I thank you for being on this show. It's time for you to share how people can get in contact with you. And Jay's contact is going to be in the list above or below, wherever you're watching this or listening to this. Click it and get in touch with Jay. So Jay, how can you help people? And how can they get in touch with you?
Well, thank you so much for that. And Andre, I want to let you know how much I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. Thank you for creating the space to have these important conversations. And for all of you that are watching and listening, thank you for investing the time in this content, right? I know that Andre doesn't take that lightly. I certainly don't take that lightly. And so I want to thank each and every one of you. So I've got one location that you can go to learn about the work that I do, the coaching, the consulting, the podcasting, radio show, all of those wonderful things, YouTube channel. So if you go to Jay Scherr businessconsulting.com, my first name is Jay, last name is Scherr. So Jay Scherr businessconsulting.com. There you'll find everything that's going on in my world and how I serve others. Lots of content out there. And if you enjoyed the conversation we had here today, definitely make sure that you are leaving a comment for Andre and that you're rating and reviewing his podcast. That goes a long, long way in helping Andre out and bringing you even more content in the future. So, Andre, again, I want to thank you so very much. I'm grateful for you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. And I told you guys listening, Jay, the voice Scherr. I think I've come up with a new name. The nuggets that he put down. We now know something new. Knowing something new without applying something new can never lead to nothing new. So enjoy your day. And more importantly, please enjoy your evolution. Guys, thank you so much. Cannot wait to speak with you and see you guys next time. Have an awesome rest of your day.